Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, I start this video with the Yoruba idiom Ese girigiri nile anjofe kuton aure nikakan. Now what does that mean? That means that there is a stampede, there's a charge towards the house of a generous man, but as soon as that generous man dies, you don't see anybody. So Ese girigiri nile anjofe kuton aure nikakan. So that's a Yoruba idiom. The king is dead, long lives the king is the English version, and life goes on, etc. So all of these idioms I build up as guys. I bring you this. Buhari Council's appointments approvals made by late Chief of Staff Abba Kyari. So it didn't take him that long for him to turn against him. Mallam Buhari, of course, and his previous Man Friday, up till the point of his demise. So again, the headline: Buhari Council's appointment approvals made by late Chief of Staff Abba Kyari. So now let's now see what underpins this seeming act of treachery. There is an indication that President Muhammadu Buhari may have directed his new Chief of Staff, Professor Ibrahim Agbola Gambari, to cancel all appointments and approvals made by the late Chief of Staff, Abba Kyari, without his permission. Though no reason was given for the president's alleged action, however, reports indicated that no less than 150 memos without the president's authorization may have been uncovered. So let's just pause there. Let's pause there for a moment, because that is quite an impactful statement right there. And that goes to the heart, to the very heart of a lot of the things that we have been saying about the Nigerian state since 2015, that Abba Kyari was the de facto president. So Abba Kyari now has so felt rested in his position that he is now acting outside of Mallam Buhari's approval, because of course he already knows. Because you have to remember that when they took Mallam Buhari to London in 2015, when he was at the death's door, effectively, when they took him to London and he went through all of that life-saving surgery that he went through in London, Abba Kyari was at the lead of all of that, and he knows then, of course, the state of health of Mallam Buhari. Not only his physical health, he also knows the state of his mental health. So effectively, he's held Mallam Buhari as a captive, not just on the account of all of the information that he already has on the Mallam, but of course also his understanding that this guy, he is just like a shell of a man that is left there. So they're just propping him up and hiding him away. So these are some of the reasons why you don't see Mallam Buhari appearing in public so often, or addressing the Nigerian nation, or appearing in debates during the election, etc., is because they know that he's mentally and physically debilitated, and the person that has the most knowledge of that was Abba Kyari. So Abba Kyari, being a lawyer and an English trained person, he was quick to the understanding that if he maintains this guy, just the only thing that Abba Kyari needed to do, which he had done successfully, was to keep Mallam Buhari alive. So if he keeps him alive and he continues to massage his ego, then he, Abba Kyari, can continue to act as the president, the de facto president of Nigeria, because of course Yemi Osinbajo, we already know that they've already emasculated him and they've already turned him into like a Dideri or something. So this is what he did, and now this 150 odd memos that has been sent, because the chief of staff can only act under normal circumstances and by the remits of the position. The chief of staff can only act on behalf of the president, and acting on behalf of the president is acting with the authorization of the president and not acting outside of the understanding of the president. So 150 memos have now been uncovered to indicate that this guy was just acting in the president's name without the knowledge of the president, because of course he knows that the president is a docile and a senile man. So now this now goes to the very heart anyway of what we've always understood to be the Nigerian system, which is of course President Abba Kyari with the Mallam Buhari picture being the poster boy of that regime. So now they've uncovered this, and now they're now trying to reverse it. But of course, we've already known this, and this has been damaging to the Nigerian state, as we've experienced all the way through. So now let's carry on. President Buhari's advisor on media and publicity, Femi Adesina, acknowledged text messages seeking clarification on the development, but declined to confirm or refute the reports. He simply said, "I have seen your text, I have seen your text," and ended the chat when the reporter reached him again minutes later via a phone call on Sunday. Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity Abba Kyari also did not reply to a text message seeking confirmation on the development. Kyari caved into the fangs of the ravaging C-19 in a Lagos hospital after testing positive to the pandemic prevailing across the globe, with the number of victims steadily rising in Nigeria. The job of the Chief of Staff makes the occupier the closest person to the president and easily the most powerful staff in the presidency. The death of Kyari came at a time his role as the alter ego of the President Buhari presidency loomed so large that some observers called him de facto president and frontline. When the late Chief of Staff contracted the highly contagious and lethal C-19, the accident helped to drive home the point that, contrary to general public cynicism, C-19 was not only real but also shows no respect for race, complexion, or continent. However, the circumstances under which the late powerful aide contracted the virus brought fresh focus his pervading influence as the de facto president. Kyari had, according to reports, traveled to Munich, Germany on March the 7th, 2020 to sign an energy supply agreement with Siemens on behalf of Nigeria. Whilst questions were asked as to why, despite not being an elected official or minister of power, the Chief of Staff had to perform such an important role, Kyari informed his close aides that he was on a national assignment to make sure that the power supply problems were fixed. Those close to him explained that the trip was evidence of his determination to ensure that President Buhari succeeded in delivering his electioneering promises, and as a patriotic move, just as some cynics accused him of hurrying to make some deals for himself. Mallam Buhari, according to those conversant with the inner workings of Aso Rock, had his hands in every pie, because he was leveraging his sound education, brilliant intellect, and experience in bureaucracy and business. But to cynical politicians and those who feel sidelined by his ubiquitous presence around President Buhari, always point out his limited success in journalism, banking, and other sectors where he had held sway, to dismiss his patriotic and keen sense of duty. One of the areas which detractors used to criticize Kyari's competence was his stint at the failed Africa Intercontinental Bank (AIB), which he presided over. His political opponents tried to describe the late Chief of Staff as the architect of the negative public perception of the Buhari administration. They also contended that although every government throughout history is wont to harbor, that's W-O-N-T, is wont to harbor a kitchen cabinet, caucus, or cabal, the remarkable distinction is whether the kitchen cabinet is public-spirited or self-centered. Self-serving kitchen cabinets are usually rated so low. As such, it could be on account of the public perception of being self-serving that Buhari's kitchen cabinet was referred to in derogatory terms as a cabal, especially going by what happened in the administration within the last 5 years. So now this is effectively what we have always held as a fact, and what we have always held as the understanding of the Mallam Buhari regime. So the Mallam Buhari regime, of course, is Abba Kyari's regime. And by the way, you just have to just pause for a moment to imagine the stuff as stupendous wealth that this Abba Kyari would have accumulated in the last 5 years or so, because he was effectively running the country. You have to remember that he almost single-handedly saved Buhari's life, because Buhari, of course, he had to fly into London and get all of the wealth that the whole of the Nigerian state had to keep this guy alive, to the point that they were not only preventing Yemi Osinbajo from seeing him when he was in hospital in London, then they were even preventing his wife Aisha from seeing him. That was how bad the state of health of this Mallam Buhari was. And even when you see Mallam Buhari now, if you see his ungainly work, because I just saw a video recently when he was sitting down to do Ramadan with the chief priest, I think the imam or whatever of the Asura, which is fair enough. But when he stood up, you could see from the way that he's the ungainly way that he was walking, that this is a man that is carrying a plethora of ailments. So this is a very sick man, both in physical debilitation and mental debilitation as well. And there are only a handful of people that really know just the physical state that this Mallam Buhari is in. And one of those top 2, 3, maybe Aisha Buhari would know, and then Abba Kyari and maybe Mamman Daura, and those are the only real people that would really know the state of health that Mallam Buhari is in. So now, how much they are going to let Ibrahim Gambari into the loop remains to be seen. But the only people that knew the state of health of this guy were really Aisha Buhari a little bit, but Abba Kyari and Mamman Daura especially. And Abba Kyari, of course, being their lead, he just then sees charged of the Nigerian state, and he was just, milking it for everything that he could take. But then the monies that this guy would have made now, how secure is it? Because he would have moved this money, but then of course he has now suddenly passed on. So it's going to end up like that Abacha narrative, where they loot all of these monies from the Nigerian coffers, take it to international shores. But then of course these people now, they've learned the lesson not to take the monies into the Western world anymore. So they are now moving the money into the Arab world, especially now when Dubai has opened up. And you know that Dubai, of course, is all entirely about money laundering. There's no other business that country has apart from money laundering. So they now move all of these monies into Dubai now. But then of course it will then depend on how much he's been able to secure those monies and who his money man is, because he'll have a bagman, of course, because no matter how intellectual he is, he's not a banker, he's not a financier. So well, he was a banker actually, because he headed the bank according to what we've just read, but I don't think he has the expertise to understand the level of monies that has been moving. So there'll be some expert moving the monies. In fact, there are sometimes they actually even move those monies in hard currencies on pallets. On pallets that you use to move goods, they bulk up dollars on pallets and ship them out of countries. This is what African leaders do, and I'm sure hopefully the Nigerian system is a lot more sophisticated than that. But really, a lot of the monies that this guy would have, and you have to also recall, sorry, I keep breaking sentences in the middle. You also have to recall that Goodluck Jonathan, I think I've said this once, said that he left $30 billion in the Nigerian coffers when he handed over to Buhari. But when Buhari took over, he said he met the coffers completely empty. So between completely empty and $30 billion, that's a lot of money. But then you have to also add to that he took Mallam Buhari 6 months for him to build up to a government. You remember that Nigeria had no governmental structures for 6 months until people were lamenting, and this guy was then forced to create some sort of a government and appoint people into positions. So between that statement of Goodluck Jonathan saying he left $30 billion and Buhari's statement that the coffers were completely empty, lies that 6 months. So the truth of that statement is in that 6 months. My belief is that they went in for that 6 months and looted everything that was there. This is my belief, because a lot of money went into getting Buhari into power. The spend that Tinubu did, Tinubu is not doing it for free. He wants his money back plus a profit. Rotimi Amechi is not doing it for free. He wants his money back plus a profit. All of the clutch of people from all over the north, the east, and foreigners, all these Indians, etc., and the Arab world, they're all putting money together to get this guy into power. They are not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They want their money back and they want to make a profit. So out of all of that narrative, from the 30 billion that Goodluck Jonathan said he left as an excess for the guy that was coming in, to Buhari saying that he made no money in the coffers, and this narration now that I've described of how Buhari got into power and the investors needed their money back and to make a profit, that is the story of that $30 billion. And at the heart of that story is one name and one name only, Abba Kyari. So a lot of money had disappeared with this guy. And now, to add credence to that theorizing, is this now what is imagined, that countless, because these are the memos that they've uncovered, not the ones that they have not uncovered, because you have to remember that Abba Kyari has been in that post for 5 odd years. So they are not going to get all of the memos for all of that 5 years. These are just the most recent memos that he would have sent out. 150 memos were sent without the president's either knowledge or authorization, and president, of course, being Mallam Buhari, a docile elderly man in his 80s who is frail of health, both physical and mental. So this is now the going on now. So this guy was just having like an orgy at the expense of the Nigerian finances, of the Nigerian central bank. He was just having his his ways. I want to be careful with the words. I was just pretty much having sex with the Central Bank of Nigeria, especially the dollar room of the Nigerian economy. This is what this guy was having for 5 odd years, an orgy with the Nigerian finances. This is what is now emerging. So 150 memos were sent which were not authorized or even of the knowledge of Mallam Buhari, to the point that whatever the contents of those memos are being reversed. So this is now the situation now. So this is now proof positive now that Abba Kyari was the president of Nigeria from 2015 till its demise. So there's no more proof that we need, because we've now had the confession. But what is now going to happen from this point till the end is what we are now really keen to find out, because this Gambari now is a seasoned international person. This is a completely steeped in the wool, soaked in the marinade, completely coated in the Nigerian ways of being sort of person, this Gambari guy now. And this Gambari guy now is now not going to come in with any sense of honesty or piety or patriotism when he knows that he only has 3 years left to catch up with whatever it is that Abba Kyari has looted. So you can just imagine and expect that this guy will just launch at Central Bank of Nigeria. This guy will probably have the Central Bank of Nigeria's governor sacked and replace him with his own man that can just sign an open check to him and continue to empty the Nigerian coffers for the next 3 years. Conversations in the comment section, the appointments and decisions that Abba Kyari had made in his latter days in the government before he met his untimely demise is being reversed, and that speaks a lot, that resonates with the sense that he was the de facto president of Nigeria. What says you? Come share thoughts. But before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. The bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me now what you're making of the intrigues and machinations and Machiavellian maneuverings of the Nigerian corridors of power in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry this conversation on with you in the comment section. But here I say peace.